Health. Health requires no medication, no supplements, no vitamins, minerals, therapies, operations, nothing of that sort. Health is natural. Health is natural, a natural state of being. Etymologically, it comes from whole, from the same root as does whole, holy, healthy. They are all one. A lack of health is simply the lack of flow of energy, or the lack of abundance of energy. In a natural state, the human being is a corridor of energy from the root to the sky, from the earth to the sky. And quite literally, his body is a highway of energy, a high voltage cord of energy between the sky and the earth. And actually energy flows both ways. And this state is realized by everybody to some degree at some points in their life, sometimes for prolonged lengths of time, sometimes for shorter lengths of time, sometimes to a greater degree, sometimes to a lesser degree. So people that are so-called, that pass certain spiritual phases, spiritual states that we might call enlightened, have attained to this flow of energy to a very, very high degree. And ailments and sickness, well, let's say they have much less chance to touch them. People that may not be known so much historically or currently, all over the world achieve these states to a greater or lesser degree without even attributing names such as enlightenment or any sort of spiritual context to it. Now, the lack of this energy comes through the lack of alignment with the ways of nature. The abundance and the flow of energy is natural. The lack of this flow and abundance comes through the lack of the lack of being natural, the not being natural. What is required for being natural is very well explained and put forth in the works of Yogi Ramacharaka, in particular in Hatha Yoga, which is concerned with the yoga of physical well-being. So ancient Eastern and for that matter, ancient philosophies from all over the world were preventive in nature, not healing in nature, not they were not concerned with ailments that are fully fledged, fully grown, so to say. They were concerned with preventing ailments in the first place. And the ancient science of Hatha Yoga, for instance, is not, as some might think, about stretching the body into different asanas and into different positions for certain lengths of time. Yes, that is an element of it, but really what it originally means and meant was it was just a science of the well-being of the physical body. So to this belong a couple of fundamental principles. Breath, and most fundamentally, whole breath, the breath of the entire lung. Now, this requires some practice, and it requires you to really learn to feel your lung. There is nothing essentially more to say than use your entire lung. The second element is water, hydration. Drinking water, which again is abundant in energy, so natural. Water which comes out of the faucet, or water which comes out of a bottle, no matter where it was bottled, what sort of ancient spring it was bottled. It is devoid of energy. The whole industry around bottled water, or for that matter, filtered water, or for that matter, filters, home filters, is nonsense. To the greatest extent, nonsense. So there are those which are saying tap water is bad, drink spring water. There are those which are saying spring water, well, there are probably less that are saying that spring water is bad, but those nonetheless that are saying you should use your own home filter to really make sure that the water is clean. Because spring water may be bottled in plastic bottles, and that may come with BPA in the water, and so on. But even glass, water bottled in glass bottles of the most ancient and pure spring, and the most remote and clean spring, is useless. It's devoid of energy. It is all the same. This whole industry of bottled water, filtered water, water filters, people talking about the pH of water being different. So now the pH is closely connected to the level of oxygen in the water, to the level of the water being oxygenated. This makes the water sterile and clean. Now, pure and clean, not sterile in a way that there's nothing in it, but pure and clean and energetic. It basically provides the water with electrons, with negative ions. Now, any water, whether it be from the faucet, whether filtered or non-filtered, whether bottled or non-bottled, can be ionized and can be energized. And this is done simply by pouring it back and forth between two vessels in a most oxygen-rich environment. And this can be anywhere. You can open, your window at home and do this in front of the window, or anywhere at home, as long as the room is well, oxygenated, as long as you don't allow the air to get stale in the room. Which brings us to the third point: oxygenation of the body through movement and through always keeping your environment oxygenated. Sleep with an open window if possible, if it's not the deepest of winters. And even in the deepest of winters, you can, if you happen to wake up in the night, you can quickly open the window for a couple of seconds, close it again, go to sleep again. Or at least in the morning, open the window and exercise. That brings us to the fourth point, which is exercise. Exercise is vital. The whole lymphatic system requires exercise. The lymphatic system of the body, which carries all the hormones, which are most closely related to your emotions, to your emotional states, to the whole well-being of the system, to all the glands, to the proper functioning of all the glands, has no pump of itself. The lymphatic system requires the body to pump the lymph fluid with all the hormones itself. And you best do that by movement, by exercise. Also, this allows blood, which might be not so dynamic in some parts of the body when you are sitting the whole day. For instance, the legs or the lower back, or the whole body actually, can flow more effectively and, well, can flow more effectively when you exercise, and the more remote parts of your body can be oxygenated and can be renewed with proper cell material, with new blood, more effectively when you exercise, when you move. Now, this doesn't need to be a marathon. This doesn't need to be very intense exercise. Everybody has their norms and their habits, but at least half an hour of walking each day, at the very, very, very least, is required to keep the body fit. Now, some exercise in the morning would be good too. Cold showers in the morning are phenomenal. a couple of push-ups in the morning, perhaps a couple of sit-ups in the morning after that cold shower are great. Then sitting down to meditate for a couple of minutes just to harmonize, get centered, get aligned. That's phenomenal. Phenomenal. That does more for your body than yeah, any sort of food regime, diet, or minerals or supplements would. Now that brings us to the following point, which is food intake. It's far more important when, in what intervals you take in food, and how well the food which has previously been taken in is digested before you take the next meal, than what sort of food you take in. This is far more important. All this gluten allergy, gluten intolerance, lactose intolerance, allergies, these are completely secondary. Now, yes, this might cause protests among a lot of people, but essentially all sorts of ailments, sickness, allergies, intolerances, whether chronic or acute, essentially comes from the lack of energy, remember? And if the lack of energy is prevented in the first place, any sort of chronic ailments or allergies can be prevented as well. Now, food, the most essential thing with food is that it is masticated properly and that it is only eaten when the previous meal has been fully digested. You can eat as organic and as healthy as you want. The food putrefies and becomes toxic in your body if it is eaten shortly or in not enough time after the previous meal, when rests of the meal are still lying in your stomach after, say, 3 or 4 hours, 2-3 hours, and you dump a whole load of new food on top of that. Now, mastication is perhaps even more important, proper mastication of the food. Because even if you mix food a lot, if you combine difficult combinations, and if you eat in, let's say, if you eat in very close intervals, if the food is properly masticated, then you are following nature's example. You are doing what nature intended you to do, to use the mouth for, and you are delivering food to the digestive tract in the way that it was supposed to be delivered, whether it be meat or vegetarian food or organic or inorganic food, gluten-free or food that is packed full of gluten, doesn't matter, really doesn't. And then the final, and perhaps, probably, yes, the most important element of physical health is simply the emotional state of being. And this is the one which, with us humans, is the most complex. A happy person, a person which is genuinely energetic and happy and filled with life energy, will not get sick. A person which is permanently happy will not get sick. Somebody, on the other hand, which is depressed or angry, will very easily attract sickness. Most chronic ailments, most acute ailments, most allergies come from a lack of energy, as we were saying. But this lack of energy, usually, in most cases, comes to a lesser degree from not following the ways of nature, which we just covered, and to a greater degree of not taking care of your emotional blockages and your emotional states. Remember, I mentioned that our system, our body, is like a highway between the root, the ground, and the sky. Well, with emotional blockages, there are blockages in that highway. And this is almost ubiquitous in among people nowadays, and only, let's say, a minority of people, as perhaps the historically known spiritual figures that might be known to most people. Almost everybody has some sort of emotional blockages to work on, and some sort of emotional blockages present to a greater or lesser degree at any given point in their life. Multiple or single, or usually it is multiple, and in multiple places in the system. Now the highway is composed essentially of the energy centers, which we call the chakras, right? And these energy blockages are centered around certain chakras usually. They may be present in some sort of meridians, but those are minor, and they are usually easy to move, or easier to move. Or let's say if some sort of central blockage is solved, the auxiliary blockages, so to say, the blockages close to it in the system, in the meridians close to it, will move as well. So for humans, it is usually, well, it is blockages, in the heart, in the intellectual realm, in the realm of the solar plexus, and the realm of the sexual centers. And yes, of course, also in the root chakra. Actually, for most people in the Western world nowadays, the root chakra is very much blocked, because we are very little in touch with the earth. And being in touch with the earth and working with the earth is really almost the only effective way to really get energy moving in that center. So working with your emotions and really, really honestly diving deep into the subconscious traumas, the negative energies of not only your own life, not only the accumulated dramas and traumas of your own life, of your relationships with other people, of your unfulfilled dreams, your unfulfilled wishes, your frustrations, and really, yes, all the negativity accumulated through the relations with other people. Not only those, but also the relations of past lives and of your ancestry all flow into this energy system which you are, and any sort of blockages in the energy system. And the history of the family is crucial in this. So all of this has to be looked at. All of this has to be worked through. Any sort of inexplicable anger or negativity comes from somewhere and has to be dissolved. Now, I'm not talking about focusing on the negative the whole time. On the contrary, I would suggest to focus on the positive as much as possible, and the negative will fall away automatically. But there's a difference between that and suppression, and letting, or having a certain feeling and not acknowledging it, not letting it flow. There's a difference between that and acknowledging that negative feelings flow through, they come and they go, and letting those feelings go again. That means feeling them to the fullest, however negative and difficult it may be. A great book in that context is Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. This is a fantastic book entitled Letting Go, which is all about letting your emotions flow, letting your negative emotions flow. And this is really this is the central aspect to health. It is perhaps more important than any other lack of alignment with nature, which of course also causes a lack of energy.